Hello and welcome back to the MMA Bar. Today we're going to discuss a matchup that has been turning the MMA community on its head since its announcement. We're talking of a fight between Khamzat Chimaev and Nate Diaz. Yes, you didn't expect that, right? Well, the fight would headline UFC 279, so let's discuss the situation surrounding the fight, its reactions, and how it could play out. After months of publicly demanding the UFC grant him the final fight on his contract, Nate Diaz has a date for his next fight. UFC Chief Business Officer Hunter Campbell told ESPN's Brett Okamoto that Diaz and Khamzat Chimaev have verbally agreed to battle in the welterweight main event of UFC 279, which takes place September 10th from T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Diaz and Boers are all set to lock horns in the high-profile bout in the main event of UFC 279. Nate Diaz would be looking to shock the world by becoming the first man to defeat Chimaev. Diaz, 37, has been out of action since losing to surging Brit Leon Edwards back in June 2021 and has publicly pleaded with the UFC to grant him the final fight on his contract. He has been locked in a contract dispute with the UFC, failing to agree on an opponent for the final fight of his current deal and unable to secure a release by the company. Diaz has trash-talked various fighters over the past few months in hopes to get a match brewing. Along with his upcoming opponent, Chimaev, he has asked for fights with Tony Ferguson, Dustin Poirier, Vincent Luke, and other fighters. Dustin Poirier was thought to be his preferred opponent for the final fight, though Diaz maintains he's been trying to face Chimaev since April. It is a matchup Dana White has been interested in booking all year, although it was reported that Diaz at first decided to turn down the fight. The welterweight bout had initially been targeted by the promotion for their UFC 276 pay-per-view, headlined by Israel Adesanya vs. Jared Cannonier. Speaking on the first time the UFC tried to make the fight, Diaz said, "Then they finally offered me the Khamzat fight, and I gave a little, what the heck? But finally, I was like, why not? Let's just get it done with and over, so I asked for the fight." For some reason, the fight was not made. Then in May, Diaz posted a picture of himself, quote, taking a piss outside the UFC Performance Institute building as contract talks with the promotion continued to stall. Diaz is recently interviewed on the MMA Hour where he accused the promotion of holding him hostage. He said, "My last fight was in June of 2021. I've been working on it. I was trying. A month or two went by and I was ready to go. I asked for several fights, but I got held up. I'm getting held up. I've been held up since the last fight. I wanted to get a fight going, but they don't want to let me out of the contract, so it's freaking going on and on and on, but I'm ready to rock." However, that dispute looks to have come to an end, with Nate having agreed to bout against Chimaev. Diaz, for a long time, has been one of the biggest stars of the UFC, being a younger brother to Nick Diaz. Nate was the winner of Season 5 of The Ultimate Fighter, and his stock rose considerably in 2016 when he stepped up on short notice and handed Conor McGregor his first loss in the UFC. The first fight with McGregor did a whopping 1.3 million pay-per-view buys, which were the most at the time. The second fight with McGregor went even further with 1.6 pay-per-view buys and stands as the second most to date. Although he never became a world champion, Diaz remains one of UFC's most popular fighters and box office attractions. Chimaev, on the other hand, has been one of the UFC's fastest rising stars, debuting with a dominant submission over John Phillips in July 2020. Chimaev fought again just 10 days later with an even more impressive victory over Rhys McKee. In his first 4 fights in the UFC, where Chimaev altered between competing in the middleweight and welterweight divisions, he took only one combined significant strike. He holds a 17-second knockout on his UFC record and has finished 10 of his 11 opponents thus far. This past April, Chimaev took his biggest step up to date when he faced former title contender Gilbert Burns at UFC 273. The back-and-forth war ultimately went Chimaev's way when he took a unanimous decision victory, but not without some scary moments in the bout. After just 6 fights in the UFC, 28-year-old Chimaev is already ranked 3rd at welterweight. Many thought Chimaev would sit out and wait for the winner of Kamaru Usman vs. Leon Edwards. Whoever wins that fight will be the welterweight champion, but it seems Chimaev isn't content sitting and will take any fight offered to him to prove his dominance. Dana White is a huge fan of Khamzat Chimaev. He said, "The guy's special. I've been in this game my whole life. I've never seen anything like him. He's special. He's different, and he wants to fight again. It's fun, and I like it, and I think when you're a fight fan, a guy like this is who you love to watch and follow, and hate, and whatever it might be." This guy is one of the most special fighters I've ever seen, if not the most special guy that I've ever come across. Diaz 37 is unranked but still possesses considerable drawing ability. It is rare for a non-title fight to headline a UFC pay-per-view, but such is the star power of the American and Chimaev that they are set to be the main event on 10th of September. For his last fight under his contract, the UFC is throwing Nate Diaz to the wolves. UFC has appeared determined to make the most out of Diaz's name value, as he is almost certain to exit the company after the next fight. Pitting the veteran against a rising phenomenon like Chimaev ticks all boxes for the UFC. Since its announcement, fans and fighters have made their remarks on this unfair matchup. On the heels of a very public fight and promotional agreement negotiations between Diaz and the UFC, the MMA community unsurprisingly had a lot to say about the sudden and unexpected matchup. Ben Askren tweeted, "This might be really ugly." Bilal Muhammad tweeted, "I hope Nate and Leon both win and ruin everyone's plans." Philip Rowe, "Nate Diaz has fought elite competition, the world-class jiu-jitsu, and is as confident as they come in the fight game. Everyone wants to talk about this being a bad matchup. You're crazy. I got Khamzat by TKO in the first." Gilbert Burns tweeted, I might start a camp in case something happens. Shrugging emoji. Jake Paul tweeted, "Better believe I'm putting my money on Nate Diaz to win versus fake Khabib." UFC commentator and former middleweight champion Michael Bisping also had his take on the matchup. Like most MMA fans, Bisping doesn't have expectations for Diaz. However, he did point up a potentially winning strategy for Nate. Bisping emphasizes how Diaz's fearless dedication to facing the most intimidating opponents has contributed to his enormous following. Given that Diaz already defeated Conor McGregor via submission, it is quite likely that he will pull off another remarkable upset for his final UFC fight versus Khamzat Chimaev. Well, maybe not so likely. Khamzat Chimaev has opened up as a favorite against the extremely popular Nate Diaz for their upcoming UFC 279 clash. According to DraftKings Sportsbook, Chimaev has opened a negative 1,150 favorite against the plus 750 underdog Diaz. Khamzat Chimaev is currently the number 3 ranked UFC welterweight, while fan favorite Diaz is currently unranked after 2 consecutive losses. The Stockton native holds a pro MMA record of 20 wins and 13 losses, while Boers holds an undefeated record with 11 wins. No doubt this bout would have Nate as a disadvantage, and Chimaev is a beggar opponent with a more elite level ground game. To make things even scarier, Khamzat said to ESPN, "I'm going to handle Nate Diaz's funeral with the UFC." This will be the last fight Nate would have in the UFC octagon as per his current contract, which he doesn't plan to renew. Regardless of how the fight plays out, it is always a pleasure to watch Nate Diaz, and he'd forever be remembered among MMA fans. Thank you for watching this video. That's all for now. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell.